What's up guys, my name's Brandon and this is the brand new iPhone 16e in all colors, just black and white. But in this video, we're going to be unboxing this new iPhone. We're going to compare it to the iPhone 16 and some of the other older iPhones and just give my overall first impressions to see if this is actually worth the $599 price tag. So you can see that we have the base model white and base model black iPhone 16e, which of course does start at 128 gigabytes. It does go up to 512 if you want to spend more. So let's go ahead and get started with the unboxing of the white iPhone 16e. The box is just exactly what you'd expect, just like the iPhone 16 and the other iPhones we've seen in the past with our Easy Pull tab right here. Let's go ahead and take this top off right here, and there is the iPhone 16e. And my first impressions are that this single camera is a lot larger than I expected. Like, I knew it was large from the press images, but take a look at how it compares to the iPhone SE3. Now, this is not an iPhone SE, this is the 16e. I've always said that this is more similar to the iPhone XR than it is to the iPhone SEs of the past, but still, here's a look at that camera lens compared to the previous iPhone SE. A pretty dramatic shift there. And if you want to compare that camera size to the iPhone 16, you can see what that looks like right there compared to the base model 16, which of course has much better color options to choose from. So Apple basically just took one of the cameras from the iPhone 16 and threw it on the 16e. So that is what we're looking at here. And this is the white. It does look very similar to the iPhone 16 white. It's a very pure white, I would say. So anyways, flipping it around to the front, we do have our paper right here along with our labels on here for what everything does. Let's go ahead and pull this off. Always satisfying, and it's good to see, a full screen iPhone for $600. And, the price tag, we'll get to that later, but $600 does not seem too bad for what you get here. And I'll explain more on why I feel that way here in a little bit. But if you go ahead and look over on the left-hand side of the iPhone, you can see that we do have our action button right there. So anyways, before we get too far into that, let me just go ahead and show you what else is in the box, which it's very simple. We just have our braided USB-C cable. So we do have a USB-C to USB-C cable. And then we have our little pill-shaped pamphlet right here. Of course, no Apple stickers included. It's just our little getting started guide right there. So we'll go ahead and throw that back into the box and put this back on and go ahead and check out the iPhone 16e some more. So this is the white color, and like I said, we do have the action button over here on the left hand side as well, just like we have on the iPhone 16. So it does not have the camera control on the right side, so we'll just bring over that iPhone 16 to show you. But as far as everything else goes, it looks very much just like the iPhone 16 as expected, again, minus that camera control on the right hand side. But as far as the size of the buttons and everything goes, it is exactly the same. But you can see that the lines are a bit thicker right here on the side, on the top, and on the bottom down here. And even on the bottom of the phone right here as well, this is thicker than it is on the iPhone 16. So just some small details that I'm noticing here. And then of course on the back, you can see the difference in the camera housing right here, and also the flash, which the flash is much larger on the iPhone 16 compared to the 16e. Now let's go ahead and check out the matte black color for the iPhone 16e. So we'll unbox this the exact same way. And there is the black iPhone 16e. So we can see that matte black color. I'm a sucker for matte black, so the matte black looks great to me. Of course, you can see some fingerprints, as you can see, but they do go away actually. So nothing too bad there in terms of fingerprints, because it is that matte texture here, which feels great. And you can see what it looks like over here on the sides as well. So very solid looking color. I personally like the black better. I use white as my daily phone, but for the 16e, I really like that matte black. It looks great for this phone. Very sleek. So let's go ahead and take this screen off the same. Go ahead and boot this up, and let's go ahead and talk about the overall design, the display, the setup, all that good stuff. So obviously in the box, we have the same stuff as the white one. Now, as far as the display on the iPhone 16e, we do have a 6.1-inch OLED display. So a lot of people thought that we were going to see an LCD display, but we actually have an OLED display on the 16e, which is nice. Now, as you can tell up top, there is no dynamic island. We have a notch still. So if you compare that to the iPhone iPhone 16, of course, which has the dynamic island. That's going to be one big difference with the display. And you'll also be able to tell that the bezels are a bit thicker on the iPhone 16e compared to the iPhone 16. Just all around, it looks thicker, of course, because this does have more of the iPhone 14 style design, especially for the display. So the bezels are going to be pretty much as thick as they were on the iPhone 14, which means that the iPhone 16 will be kind of slimmer. It kind of makes the screen look bigger on the iPhone 16, even though they have the same 6.1 inch size. And there's also a difference in the brightness. So it's kind of hard to tell right now, but the iPhone 16e does not get as bright as the iPhone 16. So the iPhone 16e gets 800 nits of peak brightness versus 1000 nits on the iPhone 16. And the iPhone 16 can actually go up to 2000 nits when outdoors and when you have auto brightness turned on. So if you're in a sunny area and you go outside often, that's where you will see a big difference between the iPhone 16 and the 16e in terms of brightness. And also the iPhone 16e is missing the 1 nit minimum brightness, which is not a huge deal, but that is something else that's missing in terms of display. Now, obviously one of the big things missing here is MagSafe support. So that's one of the most controversial changes with the iPhone 16e, because the iPhone 16 and a lot of previous iPhones did have MagSafe support. So you can still wirelessly charge the iPhone 16e. However, it's going to be at 7.5 watts. So it's going to be relatively slow. And also the MagSafe accessories will not work if you just have the phone. Now you can get cases that have that, and I'll leave some of those linked down below. But just on the phone itself, we do not have MagSafe support. All right, so let's go ahead and set up this iPhone 16e before we talk more about the device itself and why I think it is worth it and also why it's not worth it, at least just for my first impression. So let's go ahead and set this up. So since we're on iOS 18, you can see on the iPhone 16, we have this simple setup prompt right here that makes it really easy to go ahead and set up our device without having to configure too much. So we're going to put in our password and then it will begin transferring once we go ahead and scan the new phone with our old phone right here. So we have our data and privacy screen. We'll go ahead and continue on that. We're also going to set up this white iPhone 16e new so you can see how it works from both ends. So we do have to scan our face with Face ID. So let's go ahead and do that. That's going to be the primary way to unlock our 16e since we do not have a home button anymore, which is great. We're going to not use a mask for now. So let's go ahead and continue. And now we get the option to transfer our data from our old iPhone. It says it should only take 5 to 10 minutes. So we'll go ahead and do that. And while we're transferring our data over there, we're going to go ahead and set up the iPhone 16e in white from new. So we're gonna go ahead and go through this process. So you do get the appearance first. So if you want it to be default, medium, or large, you can change that. I'm actually just gonna go with medium. I do like the medium look here, and it's gonna look for quick start. So if you don't want to set up with another device, you could just do that right there. This is actually very thick. I think I'm gonna go back actually and change this to default for now. So let's go ahead back and we're gonna choose our Wi-Fi network. We're gonna set this iPhone up for ourselves. We'll go ahead and do Face ID. And we're gonna create a passcode for these test devices. I'm just gonna do my 4 zeros and use that as my passcode, but you will set yours up to be something more secure. And now you get the option to transfer your apps and data, which once again, that's what I'm doing on the other iPhone. But if you wanted to transfer from an iCloud backup, from another iPhone, from a Mac or PC, or from Android, this is the point in time where you would go ahead and do that. And if you want a step-by-step process on how to do this, I will leave this linked up in the cards and down in the description below, because I did go through this process for the iPhone 16. So for now, we're gonna not transfer anything. We're gonna set this up as a new device, and we'll go ahead and sign in to our Apple account. And now we have our signing in screen. So it's signing us in to our iCloud and all of our other first-party applications. Okay, so now we have the screen for Make This Your New iPhone. So you can go ahead and customize these settings if you would like to, or you could just keep them at default. I'm just going to keep them at default for now. So we'll go ahead and continue on this. And it asks if I want to transfer my phone number. So I'm actually not going to do that, but if you wanted to, that is where you would do it. I am going to skip the eSIM setup for now. You could always set that up later in settings. We're also going to add all of our financial cards, our Apple Pay stuff later. And now we have our Apple Intelligence screen. So yes, on the iPhone 16e, we do have the A18 chip, which does give us Apple Intelligence support. Now it's not exactly the same as the iPhone 16's A18 chip. It does have one less GPU core, so you will potentially notice a difference in performance with heavy gaming, but for most people in day-to-day use, it's going to perform pretty much identical to the iPhone 16. Now, as far as Apple Intelligence goes, again, again, Apple Intelligence is going to work just fine on both devices, pretty much the same. So we get our splash screen here telling us about the writing and summarization features, the start of a new era for Siri, and how it's built for privacy. So we'll go ahead and continue on that. And this is a new feature here that is not on any other iPhone currently, and that is visual intelligence without the camera control button. So on the iPhone 16 series, you can activate visual intelligence through the camera control, but with the iPhone 16e, you can see that we have a control center toggle now to activate visual intelligence. So this allows you to identify plants and animals, translate between languages, add events, and more. So I've talked about this on the channel, and I'll show a quick demo of that here in a moment, but that is something new that we need to check out. Now we also have the action button. So here's a splash screen for the action button, and you can go ahead and customize this straight from the setup screen. So you can change this to whatever you would like. Visual intelligence is something new as well for the action button that's only on the iPhone 16e for now. So we'll go ahead and set that up for visual intelligence. So now anytime we press and hold on the action button right here, it will launch visual intelligence. So let's go ahead and tap on continue. And now we have Siri. So here's a look at the new Siri UI. We'll go ahead and set that up as well. So you can speak to Siri if you would like to, or you can double tap down here to type to Siri, which is my preferred method. So we'll go ahead and continue. And now we have the setup if you want to activate Siri via your voice. So we'll go ahead and set that up later. And now we are done. So this is the iPhone 16e. Let's go and check out the control center here. So you can see visual intelligence is already in there from the start. So if we go ahead and tap on that, you can see it will launch visual intelligence, and it shows us what that is all about. So it says learn about objects and places around you and get more information about what you see. So if you tap on continue, it looks just like the interface that we have on the iPhone 16, which is great. So if I go ahead and take a picture of this and tap on ask, it will ask ChatGPT. So we'll go ahead and hit continue, and then you get the splash screen for turning on ChatGPT. So we'll go ahead and enable that. And now we'll ask ChatGPT about what it interprets from this photo that I took. It's going to give me basically an explanation of what it is. And that's cool. You could also do this for Google. If you wanted to reverse image search something on Google, you can do that as well by just simply tapping on search, and it will search all of the images on Google. But I think the best use case for this is when you can point it at a restaurant or, you know, any place outside, or when you're traveling and you can get information about that place. You can order from that restaurant, for example, or to translate or even adding events by simply scanning a poster on the wall, and it will give you the option to add that event to your calendar. So a lot of cool things with visual intelligence, and it's cool to see that it's in the control center by default. Oh, and let's also change the wallpaper to the exclusive 16e wallpaper. So if you go into your wallpaper section in settings and go to add new wallpaper, you will see that we have the new one right over here. So if we go down, it's actually down here a little bit further under collections, and we can see our iPhone 16e wallpaper right there. So that looks pretty neat. We'll go ahead and add that one here to our iPhone 16e. We'll set that as a pair, and if you want to blur that, you can, but I think it looks better when it's unblurred. So let's go back to our home screen. That is what it looks like, and here's what it looks like on the lock screen. Pretty neat. I like the effect over the time. Now, something else that you need to know about the iPhone 16e is that it's the first iPhone, the first Apple product ever with Apple's new in-house modem, which is called the C1. So this is, you know, what Apple calls the most power efficient modem ever on an iPhone. Now, it does have fast and reliable 5G connectivity, you know, so you're not going to have any issue with 5G. However, it does not have as good a performance as the previous Qualcomm modems like you see in the iPhone 16. So that is something to note. You don't have millimeter wave, but for most people, that's not going to be a big deal because you really only get those crazy fast millimeter wave 5G speeds when you're in like a stadium or when you're in the heart of a city somewhere, you know. So most people aren't going to care about that, but it is worth mentioning. And that's also how Apple is able to save battery life for the iPhone 16e, because the 16e actually gets better battery life than the iPhone 16 and a lot of the other previous iPhones as well. So it actually gets 26 hours of video playback, whereas the iPhone 16 gets 22 hours. So a 4-hour difference between the 16 and 16e is pretty major. So if you're somebody who cares a lot more about battery life than, you know, maybe something like the refresh rate, because we do have a 60 hertz refresh rate, or something like having an ultra wide camera. If you care about battery life more, then the 16e might actually be a better buy for you. Now, I do want to touch a little bit more on this camera here as well. So when you go into the camera for the first time, you can see we have our photographic styles right here. So we'll go ahead and set that up later, but you'll notice that we have a 1x and a 2x button right there, despite only having one 48 megapixel fusion camera lens on the back. back. But the reason we have that 2x is because this is actually what Apple calls a 2-in-1 camera. So it has an integrated 2x telephoto lens. So basically it's like having two cameras in one. That's how Apple describes it. So you can go ahead and tap that 2x there to zoom in without having to, zoom in like this, without a digital zoom, which is nice. Now this does differ from the iPhone 16, which of course does have that second lens for ultra wide shots and for macro mode. You don't get macro shots on the iPhone 16e since we don't have an ultra wide camera. We can't get close and it doesn't focus, as you can see right there. So that could be a loss if you're somebody who takes a lot of macro photos. Also, the 16e has the ordinary portrait mode. So if you go to take a portrait mode shot, you have to take it in the portrait mode. You can't take a photo where there's a subject and then turn it into a portrait later like you can on the iPhone 16. And then if you go into the camera and go to the video mode, you will see that we are missing some things like action mode, cinematic mode, just different features like that honestly are not going to be a big deal to really anybody who's even considering an iPhone 16e in the first place. And really what you'll notice is that a lot of the small features are missing on the iPhone 16e. So it has a lot of the main features that the iPhone 16 has. It's just missing quite a few of those smaller features that really, again, most people who are looking at a 16e are not going to care about, frankly. So, I do want to check out the version number as well that this came on. So this comes with iOS 18.3.1. So in case you were wondering about the software, that is the version. And of course, it does have that visual intelligence, which we did not see on any other device when that update came out. And I did also want to take a minute to look at the design differences between the iPhone 16e, the iPhone 16, and the iPhone 16 Pro. So this actually fits pretty well in the lineup because we have one camera, two cameras, and three cameras. So you can kind of see how that looks right there. And on the front, they all look pretty much the same until you turn the display on. So they all look, they have that full screen display, but of course you can tell the difference when you turn the display on because the 16e does have those thicker bezels and that notch up top. But pretty much everything else is very similar to the 16 and the 16 Pro, aside again from the camera control on the right hand side. But that's kind of how they look. That's also how the white looks on the 16e compared to the 16 Pro. So in case you're wondering how those compared, it's pretty much the same color. Like you can see that the borders are obviously not the same. It looks higher quality on the 16 Pro, of course, but you can kind of see what that's looking like right there. And of course, we do have that more matte feeling on the 16e compared to the iPhone 16 Pro. And here's how the iPhone 15 looks compared to the iPhone 16e. So if you're considering getting an iPhone 15, a base model 15 over the 16e, here's what those look like side by side. Now, side note, I would not recommend anybody get the iPhone 15 over the iPhone 16e. Yes, they might be close to the same price, but I would not get an iPhone 15 because number one, you're not going to get Apple Intelligence support, which, if you don't like Apple Intelligence, that's kind of irrelevant because if you look at iOS 18, most of the features that come in iOS 18, like software-wise, are going to be related to Apple Intelligence. So you can bet that for the next several years, we're going to see a ton of new features related to Apple Intelligence. So unless you want to miss out on a lot of the new software features, then you probably want to get a 16e over the iPhone 15. Now 15 Pro, that's a different story. I can see why you get a 15 Pro over a 16e, but that's for another video. But I just want to take a look at what all these look like side by side here. So you can kind of get a visualization of the iPhone 16e, which is over here on the end compared to some other models here on the desk. Now, a couple of other small details I wanted to just quickly mention is that we do not have the ultra wideband chip. So if you wanted to use precision tracking for your AirTags or your AirPods, you're not able to do that with the 16e because we do not have the ultra wideband chip. Also, Thread is missing. So if you're big on HomeKit and you use Thread, that is missing right here. Also, Wi-Fi 7 and Wi-Fi 6E are not allowed, or they're not compatible with the iPhone 16e. So only Wi-Fi 6, which again is not a big deal. Most people probably only have a Wi-Fi 6 router, but that is something worth mentioning. And then lastly, I did just want to run a quick Geekbench 6 test. Even though the device is still quite warm because it is still pretty fresh from getting set up, I do want to run a benchmark test just to see our initial scores here on 18.3.1 on the 16e. All right, so we scored a 3148 on the single core and a 7177 on the multi-core. So we'll continue running these tests over time and on future software versions and see how that compares, but that is the initial run for Geekbench 6. And if you're wondering about the C1 modem, I will put my SIM card, my phone number on the 16E and test that and compare it to the iPhone 16 and 16 Pro, the Qualcomm modems, and see how that compares. So stay tuned if you want to see that. And of course, we do also have our Apple Intelligence and Siri in here, if you're not aware, on the 16E. But my overall first impressions of the 16E are actually pretty positive. So I think the device feels great in hands. You know, you do notice the big bezels right away if you're coming from a newer device. But most people coming from a newer device are not looking at the 16E and will not be getting the 16E. Now, the reason I said that I do see this as being worth the $599 price tag is because most people buying a 16E are going to be trading in an iPhone, which means that they're most likely going to get the iPhone 16E for less than $500. And you get a lot of phone for less than $500, especially if you're coming from like an iPhone SE3, an iPhone 13, an iPhone 12, something like that. You're going to get solid upgrades overall. You're going to get Apple Intelligence, you're going to get the better camera, you're going to get multiple years of additional software support, you're going to get the new C1 modem, which could or could not be a better big deal to you, but you're also going to get much better battery life than those devices as well. So that's why I can see this as being worth the price tag, but it's not worth the price if you're somebody who already has like a Pro device, like a 15 Pro or an iPhone 16 or 16 Pro. Obviously, the 16E is not going to be for you, and it's definitely not worth the price to maybe, you know, trade in your device for this one. Like I said before, I just see the 16E as being very similar to the iPhone XR, which got a lot of hate at first, but then it went on to sell very well and became one of my personal favorite iPhones out there, especially once the price dropped over time. And of course, because of those trade-ins, how cheap you can get a lot of phone for the money. So we'll see. I'll continue testing out the iPhone 16E. My thoughts might change later on down the road. I will be doing a much more in-depth comparison to the iPhone 16 as well to see how they compare to each other. So let me know your thoughts on the iPhone 16E down in the comments section below. Do you think it's a good phone for the money? What are your thoughts overall? Of course, the MagSafe missing might be a big deal for some people as well. Apple said that anybody buying the 16E, most people buying the 16E, I should say, do not use MagSafe. They just use wired charging with the USB-C ports, which I can understand that. Of course, Apple does have the, you know, research to know that most people buying this phone are not going to use MagSafe. So that's, you know, debatable. I think it's needed. I would like to see MagSafe on here, but it is what it is. Let me know your thoughts anyways about the 16E down in the comments below. And also make sure to subscribe to stay tuned for more iPhone 16E videos and of course more iOS software update videos as well. But anyways, guys, thanks for watching and I'll see you soon.